we just had a client walk in with $1.4 million saved, a federal pension, and a decision to make. Take Social Security at 62 or wait until 67. I'm Mamadou Bojan, and today Tony and I are going to walk through her exact situation and show you the math behind the decision. If you are in your late 50s or early 60s, this is the same decision waiting for you. Tony, good to see you, buddy.
Great to see you, Mama.
Yeah? So this client walked in, we're not gonna make names or say names over here, but the client walked in here, and I think her exact situation is 62 and has 30 years of service, obviously able to retire, for $1.4 million in the TSP account, and it has a pension that's about $45,000 a year, and in a full retirement with Social Security, probably about $2,600, right? So the question now is, like, should she take Social Security at 62, or should she basically wait until full retirement, right? I guess we can dive into it, but what's your perspective? Because I know there's a lot of conversation around when to take Social Security. Obviously, we tell people that here there is definitely a case for people to take Social Security at 62. But also, there is probably a good chance that people should wait and then take it at full retirement, or even maybe delayed, right? So when you think about those situations, what are some of the things that we work in the office, right? I kind of think about to help clients to make a decision. What are some of the factors that we look at?
Well, that's also great, Mamadou. And I'll share with you is that, $1.4 million, a lot of federal government employees dream about having that, right? Yeah. So when it comes to talking about Social Security, where it's another source of income, right? We got to talk about planning. Why do we want to take this early, right? Do we need it for income? Are we going to be working still past the age of 62? Mm-hmm. What's the overall plan about when we want to do Roth conversions, for example, right? Yeah. So that decision can make a long-lasting impact. And even with spouse, for example, right? A lot of federal government employees, they're all married, right? Mm-hmm. And so making sure that we talk about, hey, this is what your Social Security looks like, but Social Security is really a family decision, right? About, hey, what does our family income look like, and do we need it? Should I start it early? Should I postpone it? There's a lot of different factors that come into play. So making that decision is so critical. And when people make the wrong mistake, right, they take it on too early, it could have a lasting impact on somebody's financial plan.
Yeah, and it's a great point because, so when we think about 62, I think that's the year that everyone who has paid into Social Security and they met all the quota requirements, they are eligible to start collecting Social Security. So some people, they will think about that and say, oh, I'm at 62 now, I can collect Social Security. And what do you do? Just go and apply, but there's no kind of planning around that. Because when you take Social Security at 62, there is a reduction. It's about 30%, 25-30% reduction on their benefits, right? And that could be a significant amount over their lifetime, right? So in that scenario, what we look at is to say, well, hey, how is your health, right? Are you in good health? Do you need the income? If they don't need income, like this client over here that working with $1.4 million, obviously got the pension, doesn't need the income now. So I think, taking Social Security at that point, in our point of view, is probably not the wise thing to do, right? Because it's going to be reduced.
No, absolutely. And, I think for her perspective, right, I think her biggest concern was talking to a lot of people about, hey, the solvency of Social Security, oh my gosh, I don't think Social Security is going to be there, mm-hmm. right? So you know what? I got to take it early, and hopefully I'll invest that money that I don't use, and hopefully it'll grow, right? But I'm going to get it as soon as I can get it, right? Yeah. And so, what that really does, it really limits her in a sense of saying, you know what? If Social Security, if I start taking it, right, well, there's some other things that come into play, right? Because if I continue to work, right, if I get an outside job, consulting or whatever it may be, well, wait a minute, I'm not going to get it anyways because she's a high income earner. It's probably going to go away, right, for her, that she won't get it right away. Yeah. So why would you want to, one, turn it on early, right? And then the second thing is, she was talking a lot about, hey, what's my Roth conversion going to look like? Because she was worried about taxes, right? Mm-hmm. And by the way, if she's getting Social Security, there's a window that we kind of look at to make sure from a planning perspective, what's the optimal time that we want to help her from the planning perspective of saying, hey, let's minimize our tax bill, right, for the future.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, and I'm glad that you brought that out because when we talked to her about, because her intention is actually, she's very active, she's going to retire, but she still want to work somewhere else, and then it's very likely that she's going to bring in a lot of money that's going to basically go over the threshold for the Social Security. So in this scenario, not only if she takes Social Security at 62, not only is she getting the reduction, but then now that Social Security is not going to be withheld because she's making too much money. She's not going to lose it. Eventually, she'll get it later on, but she's not going to be able to enjoy it now. So if that's the case, then why do you have to take it now? So we don't want that to happen. So in this scenario, I think it makes sense for her to be able to kind of like delay it until 67, like full retirement age now. So you mentioned Roth conversion, which is very good. I think and then that's the window that most people miss, right? Because we like to tell in the office to clients in the office over here is a 59 and a half, your retirement window kind of like opens, right? And then if you think about the way the things are structured in this country, there's a different tax traps in different places, points, right? If you get to 63, there is a trap. 62, what's the trap there? Because whatever you do at 63 is going to affect what 2 years later, like what? Your Medicare, right? So Medicare always go back, 65, you're going to look at what you have at 63. So 59 all the way to 63, that's probably one of their biggest opportunity, and that's why Roth conversion comes into play, right? Because at that point, their income is probably lower. We could try to do more of like the Roth conversion piece, right? So if you think about the Roth conversion, when we look at this, what are some of the things that we look at? Do we look at their tax returns? What are some of the strategies that we think about before we can even start the Roth conversion?
Yeah, we just want to figure out where the assets are, right? That's the most important thing. Are you in taxable accounts, non-taxable accounts? How long you've had the Roth account that's set up, right? Those are some of the factors. And again, married couples, right? We really want to make sure that as we look at your tax returns, right, and we understand who's currently working, what kind of incomes are coming in, we want to make sure that, again, we want to keep you within either your current tax bracket or if it makes sense, right, look for the efficiency because there's always been the most efficient time to really start to do the conversion and really doing an analysis from your tax returns really help us pinpoint that.
Yeah, and then in her situation, so I think, because she doesn't need the money, obviously 67, 62 is not the right place. So now the question becomes 67, which is her full retirement age. Should she take it at 67 or should she delay it at 70, right? So in this scenario, we basically decided that, at least she, at full retirement age, she could start collecting her Social Security because she can go and make as much money as possible without basically impacting her Social Security. And so in that sense, kind of like maximize. Because if you want to delay it up to 70, which is always a good thing, but we are just increasing your Social Security by what? By 8%, right? And I think, she felt like, delaying at 70 is probably that's something that she's not thinking about, right? So I think in this scenario, taking out a full retirement would make sense, right? So at full retirement, do their Social Security get impacted at all?
No, I think to your point, right? When they hit their full retirement age, whatever age that may be, they can make as much income as they want and not have to really worry about that.
Yeah, and I think that's for most people that's very very that's rewarding because now they feel like they put money into their Social Security. The government basically essentially say, hey, give us this money later on, we'll give it back to you. So they want to make sure that they can maximize that money coming back, right? So taking it early would definitely be an issue, right?
Well, and also I'll say this, in her scenario, I think what we don't talk a lot about is family history, right? Because think about it, if you have longevity in your family, the likelihood, as long as you're healthy now, the likelihood you live in a long time, or as long as your parents or even your grandparents, right, is probably high, right? And so you kind of think about, getting Social Security and getting it for a longer period of time, it adds up, right? Yeah. And so I think for her, just when we had a conversation with her, she was like, oh, when you kind of see your numbers and see what the lifetime income starting at 67 could look like versus taking a 62, what a big eye opener.
Yeah. No, I think it makes a lot of sense. That's why I tell people, for most people, their largest financial asset would be their Social Security, because if they maximize it in the right way over their lifetime, it could be significant. It could be millions of dollars, right? Now, so let's think about from this couple point of view. Is there a scenario where somebody would be able to, or would make sense for somebody to delay, right? Let's say, for example, a couple, you know, is there any reason why somebody will take it at 67 and then the other one will delay up to like 70?
Oh, absolutely. So if you have, for example, a spouse, right, and they're actually making less Social Security, right, it would benefit them to have the other spouse who has a higher Social Security amount to delay it. And the rationale behind that is because when one spouse passes, right, their surviving spouse can always pick between their Social Security or the deceased spouse, whichever is higher.
Yeah, okay, makes sense, right? So let's say, for example, my wife and I, and my wife's Social Security is larger than mine, and we both are the same age. So if I'm at 67 and then she's at 67, and her Social Security is, let's say, for example, 5,000, and then mine is like 3,000. So I think what you're saying is, maybe if we don't need the income, maybe it makes sense for me to collect it now and try to bring in the income, and she can delay. Because if she delays, I believe that every year it increased by 8%. And then, so if she's no longer here, or I'm no longer here, we usually say if the guy is no longer here, right? So if I'm no longer here, so then she already will pick up her own, like, but now it's going to be what? Larger now because she delayed it, right? Or if she's no longer here, then I would pick between the two. Obviously, hers would be larger. Okay, so that's strategy that most people don't realize, and I think if you think about it, though, when we do our Social Security modeling for our clients, we look at different scenarios, different ages when you're going to take it, and see what's the optimal way how we can maximize that, right? I think, from a planning point of view, I think that goes a long way. So you've been doing this for quite some time now, Tony. Do you see scenarios where people make mistakes on their Social Security?
Mamadou, all the time. And it really has to deal with some emotions, right? I think, when we hear from other people that, hey, the solvency of Social Security is not going to be there, or, hey, you should invest this money and you can make a lot more, right? We hear a lot of those things because they hear it from other people, right? And they believe that, oh, these people are doing well, so I should take their advice. But the biggest thing is that everybody's circumstance is very unique and it's very different, right? So what may work for you might not work for somebody else. So we got to make sure that from a planning perspective, right, we want to make sure we understand the why. Why should you do something, right? It could be about math. It could be about your needs, right? What if you don't need the income? Right? Yeah. Does there a point to take it? Right? If you live a very long time, right? If you have longevity in your family, it makes sense just to kind of delay, right? Yeah. And so we've seen this a lot where the overall amount of Social Security. I always talk about a break even, for example, right? Yeah. We always ask, hey, how you have longevity here? If it takes you 10 or 12 years to break even from taking early to later, do you plan to live more than 12 years? Yeah, right. Yeah. And so it's eye opening when you kind of do the numbers, and when people see it, they don't make the mistake, right? When they come to us, we can kind of show them the path forward and give them the direction of saying, hey, from an efficiency standpoint, from a needs perspective, here's why you should delay, or here's why you should take it at this age.
Yeah, and I think going through those numbers and then for them to see. I think you could see when we're doing this stuff, it's almost like a dial. They would say, oh, well, but why don't take it at 68 or 65 or whatever it is, right? So we'll walk them through and then see the difference, right? And then at least if they're able to see what that potential income could be that they can bring into the family, I think it makes sense for them, right, to take the right planning piece. But, can we dive into the FERS retirement supplement? And I know there's a misconception out there. Some finance advisors will call it Social Security supplement, which is not the case. It doesn't come from Social Security. It comes from OPM. So the FERS supplement, and there's a lot of confusion out there. And you hear this. People will come in and say, oh, my FERS supplement, I can get that even when I'm collecting Social Security. Is that is that true?
No, it's not, unfortunately. It would be nice if they could, right?
Yeah.
But unfortunately not. What happens is that for anybody retiring at their minimum retirement age, right, and over 30 years of service, means they're fully qualified to actually retire. They're going to be able to start collecting a FERS special supplement, right? And they'll get that till age 62. Now, the reasoning behind that is that the federal government says, you know what, we know you can't take Social Security until you're age 62, but until then, we'll provide you the supplement. Now, after 62, it's a decision that you have to make, right, with you and your family about should you turn it on or not, but that supplement absolutely goes away.
So that goes away at 62. Okay, so that's where the kind of like, we call that the bridge, right? The bridge to get you to Social Security age. And then, so in this scenario, it's very likely that somebody who retires, let's say at their full retirement at 57, with the minimum of 30 years of service, so they can start collecting that first supplement until 62. So what would happen at 62, then that supplement goes away. So their income will now fall. So it's up to them to kind of collect Social Security if they need to. And that's where we come into play to be able to provide strategies for them, right? Now, is there a scenario, so if somebody is not collecting at 62, right, they want to wait until probably like their full retirement, because that's a 5-year gap. So what are some of the strategies that we do in the office to kind of like bridge that gap?
Well, it really depends, right? It really depends on, the first thing we always do is make sure that we understand what their needs are, right? Because ultimately, how do you know where you are if you don't know where you want to be, right? And so as we look at the bridge, right, we look at the gap, right? So this is where we're coming in with our pension, right? And we don't have Social Security yet. Well, what's that gap look like from what they need to live off of, right? And we love the fact that, we talk a lot about our happy strategy, right? Holistic income planning. We want to make sure that if you have the guaranteed income that you need or the income that's coming in, regardless what happens in the market, right? You should have a happy and successful retirement because you have the income coming in. Then gives you the flexibility to figure out, hey, when do we turn on Social Security? Because that's going to be an added bonus. So we can leverage, again, your TSPs, we can leverage any kind of 401ks, IRAs, retirement plans, or any kind of outside investments people have, right? We can kind of take a look at all that and try to figure out what's the best strategy that we can optimize for them.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense. A lot of times when we're able to show people that strategy or plan, how they can enjoy their profound retirement, that put them at ease, and then not to kind of like go and collect Social Security. Because a lot of times when they come into the office, or the decisions why they collect Social Security, other reasons like, their friends said this and all that, but I think also it's like they're wondering, hey, where am I gonna get this, like, income coming in? So the first thing that goes in their mind is, let me go collect Social Security. Whereas they could be sitting on the solution in their portfolio because they have not talked to a professional like us to be able to show them a way how to optimally do that, right? So I'm glad you brought that up. I don't know about you, but for me, though, Social Security, for most people, it's probably the biggest financial asset, right? So if you have to give advice to people in terms of like how they need to view their Social Security, what would that be?
I would suggest them to kind of think of Social Security as something that is as an additional income stream that they're entitled to. They worked very, very hard for it, but don't make a rash decision on when to turn it on based on what you hear outside. Come to a professional, figure out, hey, when should our family turn on this income? Because I think you said it again, right? This could be one of the largest income or amounts of assets that you're going to have, right, for your entire life. You get one shot at it, right? Yeah. So don't rush into that decision. Make sure it's really thought out, it's thorough, and you've done the analysis with a professional to ensure that it's the optimal decision to make.
Yeah, and I think the other thing also is, the beauty about Social Security is what we call a protective lifetime income, right? Meaning that you cannot outlive Social Security. I know there are people talk about Social Security is not going to be there and all that. Fine, that's a different conversation, but it's designed in a way that for you to have that money coming in, no matter what the stock market situation, market goes up or down, your Social Security is going to get it, right? So you're gonna receive it every single month, right? So it's very, very important that they do understand that right now. One thing that I would mention that Social Security is not meant to replace 100% of your income, right? It's not meant for that. But at least if it replaces only maybe 30% or 40% of your income, at least that's a good thing, because that means you have to worry about maybe at least like 70 or 60% coming from your portfolio, right? It puts a lot more kind of like less pressure on your portfolio compared to if you don't have it at all. Then now you have to take out the maximum amount from your portfolio. That could deplete in case the stock market goes down or not. But certainly I enjoy these conversations, Tony. Where I know we can go on and on about Social Security, but I think we'll wrap it up over here. So if you're listening to this video and then you're thinking about your Social Security strategy and then you worry about that, please give us a call, because like we said before, if you maximize your Social Security strategies, it could potentially be the largest financial asset that you have. Because if you think about how much you collect over time, if you add all of that together, that could potentially be bigger than what you have in your TSP. So do not rush to make this decision. Make sure that you come to a professional. Let us guide you. Let us show you the optimal way you can do this. That way you can enjoy the retirement that you deserve, because you deserve this. You put into it, you deserve to get the maximum out of it. So if you like this video, please make sure that you subscribe. Tell your friends. But this is where we can come in and share our knowledge about federal employees and your benefits. That way we can profoundly impact your retirement. Your Social Security decision isn't just about the check. It's about your tax plan, your spouse, your health, and your goals. If you are within 5 years of claiming, book a Social Security strategy call at the link in the description. We will model your specific numbers so that you can enjoy that profound retirement.